Hi, a very good day to all of you who are tuning here at What's Up Live, tuning into us. My name is Dev Tyagi, and I am really at a great sense of joy today. My disposition is of peace and happiness today because it's not always that I get to interact with people who actually always make me think and pause about life because, what are we as humans beyond the ebbs and flows of life and beyond the mechanical existence of life? We sometimes fail to pause to observe that we are also humans first, the human experience, that we are beyond the callings of a writer or a choreographer or a mechanical engineer or a bootstrap entrepreneur. We are human beings first. And something that has been very avidly presented to me by the person with whom I'm sitting today, a very keen, observant, brilliant thinking, bubbly individual called Ashriya Puri. Welcome to What's Up Life.
Thank you.
She is all this and more. And I want to first understand from her that when she talks about the human endeavor of being a humanist first, what she means, and besides anything else, this is a multi talented individual who happens to be not just a therapist, but also an exceedingly bright and a constantly observant and a constantly unflinching artist who makes amazing creativity come to life as only she can. Ashreya, over to you. First, about the human endeavor, about being a humanist. What do you mean by that?
I think first I want to say that's a pretty grand introduction. So thank you and thanks for having me here. I
Pleasure.
think it's great because I know this has been in the works for a while. But I'm very grateful that we're here and we're doing
It's an
this.
absolute pleasure.
Um, when I say human first, I am a therapist, I am an artist, but I've often described myself as a human first because I don't think I'm fully one specific role. I feel like personally I'm very fluid. I think I'm parts of both.
Right.
And I think when I view life and when I interact with people, I tend to see that most people fixate on the roles they play. They form their identity through one specific role, but I don't view life like that. I think human first means embracing the chaos and the messy and not having it figured out and just going through the motions of life as is.
Right. So, Ashay, whenever you and I talk without cameras or the glaring lights being on our face, we often talk about psychology and what an important and a definitive part it has played in your life.
Yeah.
So, I want to understand what pushed you to take psychology, what were you most interested by it, and how has psychology and the subsequent vocation that you followed shaped your life and your career?
So I think from a very young age, fun fact, I was going to do fine art first. I
Oh,
wasn't
wow.
going to pursue psychology, but then I decided to keep art a passion and not a profession for the simple reason that when you make something a profession, there's added pressure to pursue it and to make it as an artist. So I wanted to keep that kind of separate. That being said, being an empath came very naturally to me. I found myself holding space for people, for example, in a room full of people, that one soul that, seemed a bit lost. And I think I was constantly drawn to that. I have also faced my own mental health challenges. I was fortunate enough to come from a family that sort of knew that therapy was the right approach whilst going through it. And and yeah, once I came out of it on the other side, I realized if I can get through it, then if I can impact even one more life
Right.
to kind of get through it, that's the purpose.
Right. Purpose driven individual, creative to the core, fascinating and enterprising. As I've always said, I'm full of adjectives, whatever I can recall today, being honestly not plastered there, but deposited here with firm regard and respect. I want to also understand, many people, the elders around us, are often judgmental about the youth, and I want to
Yeah.
move this discussion towards the youth. They say that, of course, these constantly, frequently app navigating, Tinder loving, tender youth of our times are possibly lost or confused. There's so much of information and knowledge at their fingertips that somewhere they feel that they don't really have a purpose. Do you feel that's true? Do you feel that the judgments often pointed at us rather, are perhaps a little vague and contrived of reality?
I think us is a very large term. I
Correct.
think if we look at Gen Z and if we couple that with, say, COVID, I think isolation, loneliness, all of that did lead to the youth turning to apps and need for companionship. I don't just mean Tinder and Bumble, I mean just in terms of AI as well. I think individual in person interaction sort of faded and people became a bit reliant because
Right.
anxiety was at an all time high, and I think it's accessible at your fingertips, right?
Right.
But that being said, I do feel like you miss the essence of humanity the second you turn to that, if you depend on it. It can be
Right.
supplemental, it's great.
Right.
I think AI that way is a tool that you can use as a supplement, but depending on it for, say, emotional needs, and I see a lot of that now. I see articles about people turning to AI for therapy. I see articles about women turning to AI as a partner because they feel lonely in their own relationship, and AI works on the information that you feed it, but it sort of takes away from the rupture and repair that is required in human interaction. So I think that judgment is sort of bang on, except there's still a
Yeah.
gray area to
Right.
explore.
I thought as much. I want to understand how many years you've given for this part of your vocation, which is about being a therapist. You spoke about being an empath, and talk to me about some unique experiences, how it has in turn shaped you, cultivated your personality.
So I did my undergrad in psychology. I had psychology in the 10th to 12th grade. Then I did my undergrad in psychology. I did my postgrad in psychology. But it doesn't end there. You have to be trained in multiple different modes. So I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist. That's my sort of main modality. But I view things from a humanistic lens again.
Right.
So I adapt as I go along. When I moved back from England after my undergrad, I worked in and out of India. I lived in Sri Lanka. I did a mental health placement there. And I think I've sort of got experience from people from different walks of life. So I don't want to go into like the clinical aspect of it that I've dedicated X amount of time.
Right.
I don't want to like define the number because I think it's an ever changing number. You
Yeah.
have to constantly be up to date and keep
Right.
learning. But yeah, I went, I did Sri Lanka, I came back, I worked in Tihar jail for a little while. I worked with prisoners, newcomers, provided psychological first aid. So yeah, I think those are pretty big,
Leaps.
leaps in my space. And I think a lot of my interactions there sort of shaped me because I realized this is a bit far fetched, but I realized that people cannot live in isolation. I think there's you in the context of every single thing around you. And so, working in halfway homes with women that had schizophrenia, to working with prisoners and maybe, the common man that decided it's better to commit a petty theft or a petty crime and come into the prison setting because that means that, you are well fed, your medical bills are looked after, you have food 3 times a day. You don't have to fend for yourself outside. I realize that in the grand scale of things, there's you in the center, but you are tied to all of these different constructs.
Right.
And I think that shaped me viewing life as a human, like as from a humanistic lens.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of your interaction would be centered around the youth. Is that right? Do you interact a lot with the youth in different age groups, like starting from the teenage years and so on
Yeah.
and so forth?
Yeah.
How serious or grave a concern actually is the aspect of loneliness, which of course nobody wants to have crept into, but it does creep into us at times from time to time. Do
Yeah.
you think that loneliness in the youth is actually that big a problem?
Yeah.
As what I come to read in, for example, in any of India's national dailies, those numbers, you have those reels on Instagram and whatnot. तो ये क्या है ये जो मुद्दा है, this issue? How grave or deep it is?
I think it's very, very prevalent. I see loneliness as being a factor for a lot of people to do things they won't normally do and to get into, risky behavior, to get into relationships out of sheer loneliness for the need of companionship and then end up destroying you know, what their own purpose was to begin with.
How does this loneliness impact youngsters, and is it actually that serious or that grave a problem today with our youth?
I believe so. I don't think it's just a problem in our youth. I think even the older generation, that's often overlooked. People that have lost their companions after years, people that, come of a certain age that no longer feel that companionship with their partner while they're still alive. I think loneliness creeps into every aspect of one's life in context to other people. And when you talk about loneliness in the youth, I believe that since the pandemic, I think social anxiety was already at an all time high,
Yeah.
right? And what ended up happening is, in an attempt to connect with individuals, you turn to your screens or you turn to apps, you turn to social media, all of that. But what ended up happening as a result of that is you lost the essence of human connection and human interaction, which is so important for just cognitive development. Like, look at the children of this day and age, like toddlers that are given a tablet the second that, you know, you
Elders are having a tablet, youngsters are already
youngsters
on the
are on that
tablet.
yeah, and that off screen time allows people to connect and develop and learn about themselves. So I think when you say loneliness, also that it's very multifaceted, right?
Hmm.
Loneliness can come about not just because of the lack of individuals around you. It can also come about because your sense of identity that is tied to, the ways that you think, the ways that you interact, everything around you, everything you're learning. Um, the second that gets a bit fragmented, say you don't feel validated. If I come up to you and I say, I'm feeling like this, and you look at me and you're dismissive and you tell me, nay, you're not allowed to feel like this. What is this? It's such a small thing. Instinctively, I'm like, oh, it's such a small thing. I should feel less. And now I already feel isolated. I feel like, look, this person doesn't understand. I'm being too much. And I feel like all of these things give rise to a deep seated sense of loneliness. I can tell you in my own journey. I can make this personal and say, I hit 30 not too long ago. It came with a full blown existential crisis. Who am I? What have I achieved? Where am I? As a psychologist, I've done the inner work. I know the tools that I can use. But as somebody that's going through it, it is a very isolated and very lonely journey because you feel like the rest of the world doesn't understand, even though you know that people, feel it at multiple different points. The who am I or the big
Or do
questions.
you think that people, youngsters especially, sometimes misconstrue and unnecessarily, possibly, they succumb to this pre-manufactured truth that we will be misunderstood, so who cares?
Yeah.
So maybe a way of foreshadowing loneliness is this reckless behavior sometimes. Do you
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah. I think that happens as well. But again, I think all of it comes down to societal norms and conditioning and the environment you grow up in. And funnily enough, this is actually something that I thought I would discuss today is psychology. Being a psychologist in this profession, I believe that psychology only exists. I don't want to minimize it to this, but
right?
one of the aspects for it to exist as a profession is because I think we've adopted the Freudian way of thinking, which
Okay.
is that a lot of who we are now is shaped by what we learned as kids or your unconscious or your ego, your all of that exists. I'm not refuting that. But if you look at the Adlerian way, it says the past does not exist. It is what you make of it. If you say Freud says hierarchy, India, for example, right? Authoritarian parenting. Schooling, which is of hierarchy, you're not allowed to question. You're just supposed to learn what's taught to you. Critical thinking, that's not something that, kids are encouraged to do. And all of those things, when you grow up with that environment, you shrink. You don't grow. And that shrinking, I think, coming back to your point of loneliness, I think youths, adults, people from different walks of life, I just think as it just kind of seeps into,
And it kind of dwarfs one's personality
yeah,
as much as dreadful
yeah,
as that can be.
yeah,
I want to understand. So, when we talk of Ashriya Puri, the empath, the humanist, and when we talk about Ashriya Puri, the artist, who's discovering a best phase, your best days definitely lie ahead of you. You are You're so young right now. How do you dabble with these completely different, aspects of your professional and creative life? Isn't it difficult because it's like completely contrasting elements?
It kind of is, and I get that. I get asked that a lot.
Yeah.
Two different ends of the spectrum.
Right.
How are you
Right.
managing? I don't think this are that different though.
Okay.
I feel like what I receive from psychology can sometimes be heavy.
Right.
Some of the work I've done is extremely challenging.
Right.
It does take a toll on
Yeah.
you. You need your own mental health days. But that being said, if you channel that as your creative outlet, you just created something beautiful that exists in raw emotion. So coming back to the human aspect of me, kind of that's how I flow through life, and that's how I hope people are able to flow through life without this clear cut
Right.
sense of, oh, it's one or the other. I think it's a bit of whatever you want it to be.
Like two adjacent roads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think that
Yeah.
I don't think they're parallel.
Okay.
I think they intersect at some point, and then you can pick up what resonates with you and leave the rest. And
Right.
so, yeah.
So at What's Up Life, our listeners and watchers would love to know more about your artistic journey. How did it come about? What are your dabblings in art? And I was lucky to be part of the massive mural that you
Yeah.
had so beautifully painted at the Canadian High Commission
Yeah.
at Chanakya Puri, New Delhi, very much here
Yeah.
itself. And it was a beautiful piece of art. Take us through that and your journey as a developing artist.
Yeah. So it started as an outlet for my creativity. I wanted to make wearable art in the form of sneakers and bags and wallets, all things leather and
Wow.
denim. Again, it felt like it was a piece of, your identity that you can carry with
Right,
you
right.
or wear on you and wear very, very boldly. Because I've done custom sneakers for F1 fans and, for
I was
Spy-
particularly enthused about the Max Verstappen shoe,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
sneaker. Yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, I feel like even just custom art is a way, it's a way of wearing your identity on you. And so it started on that scale with, obviously I do canvases and commissioned art,
Okay.
but it started that small with sneakers and bags and wallets. And then I got the project as a mural at the Canadian High Commission, thanks to an artisan. They approached me and, they said, there's a project and it's grand and you must do it. I think that wall was also, I call the mural Layers of Her.
Layers of her.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Which is that identity is fluid and there's multiple layers to being. And so that in itself was an entire experience. But I think it reinforced the belief that, there's joy in creating and it doesn't matter the outcome. I think when you have fun with it, and I think when you stop focusing on the finality of everything,
Right.
I think that's when magic happens. Because even getting into that project, it took a lot of, self affirmations and lots of self doubt. Will I be able to do it? Which I think is very normal. I think every person goes through
Right.
that. But that being said, sometimes when that self doubt creeps in, it hinders you creating what you actually want to create.
Okay.
And so that was an entire journey, and it was extremely rewarding at the end, as I'm sure you saw.
Yeah, I
It
absolutely
was,
loved it. Yeah.
it was, I don't know, it was
Very
delightful
joyous.
to have people from, different embassies and dignitaries come in and see that work at that scale. And now I can finally say my name is on Canadian soil in Delhi.
Certainly is.
It is.
One tick mark done.
Yeah, and I no
Right,
longer have
right.
to just introduce myself as a custom artist. I am a multidisciplinary artist. No?
You are. Ashriya, I wanted to understand what are the plans and what has been the journey up to this point with Custom Coalition. You said that you started it 3 years back, 2022 end to be
Yeah.
precise. What are the plans for this entrepreneurial venture that you have, which is all about art at being the center of it all?
Yeah. So I genuinely think it started as a passion project.
Right.
I don't want the passion to die out. And the second I view it as something that I need to achieve. And the second I start fearing it not working, I genuinely think that's the end of it. So the plan, as always, in every aspect of my life is to grow. I want to expand. I want more people to kind of realize the value of carrying
Right.
a piece of you outside. When words fall short, turn to art,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I wanted to grow, and I generally see it going places.
Right.
I want to continue doing what I love doing, which
You
is
have been exhibiting also at different
I have. So I've done a
events.
couple of exhibitions of my paintings, of my sneakers, and I've done Goa socials. I think that was also covered by one of the magazines. There was a little write up about it. But yeah, it started small, and I see endless opportunity with it. I see myself being an artist, being an empath. I think being that human that looks at identity, different parts of identity, and then combining all of them to make people feel, you know. And as the artist and therapist in me, I am currently working on a project to merge the two.
Wow.
I am building sort of an emotional museum for people to come experience, you know, different parts of art and themselves and stored emotions. And so that's in the works. I don't want to divulge too much.
Right. No, no. I wish
But
you all the best and a lot of success with that. I wanted to ask you that in your work as a therapist, it could be that there could be some people who approach you who have a genuine problem. And what if those people are introverted? So, how do you tackle an introvert who definitely has a problem and hence he or she has turned up to you, knocked on your doors, and you are there accepting them? But
yeah.
this puri process, mein, how do you convey your feelings and convince somebody who's actually not very open to emoting to come on top of what's been bothering them or what's been a hindrance?
Yeah, so at least in my experience, I
Fair
have
question.
very well put actually. Um, in my experience, I have come across people that are introverts that take their time opening up. As a therapist, you are trained and you learn to form a rapport with people. It can take anywhere between 3 to 5 sessions to do. I've worked with kids from underprivileged backgrounds that come from backgrounds of violence and abuse and, trauma. And with them, particularly, opening up is a gradual process
Right.
because they are, skeptical of anyone entering that space. With an introvert that finds it hard to emote, I think it's a little bit more than just creating a safe environment for them. I don't view therapy as you are a client and I'm a therapist.
Right.
Therapy is a collaborative effort. So if you come to me with a problem, sure, we'll get to those problems. But also, if you come to me because you want to feel and you want a space to feel and feel it out without judgment, all of that,
Right.
I think that is my approach. I think the first thing I do is tap into the humanity of it. And then we go into goal setting. If your goal is to change that about you, then there are tools. And then we shape our, you know, sessions according to that. But yeah, I think therapy that way is very collaborative. And I invite people, in fact, I invite my clients to challenge me or tell me if something's not working for them. Because there's no one size fits all in this. If you come to me introverted and I tell you, no, you must speak your emotions,
Yeah.
I think that'll scare you a lot more
Yeah.
than it will
It'll
do
be very
good.
intimidating. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think it's done at the pace that works for the client coming in.
What's the most challenging or arduous part of being a therapist? Of course, it can't be like a not so rocky road, is it?
Huh. I think that it's got a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
In all honesty, therapy is very, very challenging. In India, I think it's picked up over the last few years. There's been an exponential surge in practitioners, in people applying for courses,
Right.
people getting trained in multiple modalities.
Right.
As a therapist that's practicing, once you're trained in multiple modalities, what ends up happening is you're not an expert of. It's like master of none.
Right.
It's kind of something like that. But what I see within the field is the hurdles that can come up is when you see an extra challenging case, for example, where there is a lot of trauma involved. I am trauma informed, but that being said, I'm also a human being. I'm a deep
Right.
feeler.
Yeah.
And you can't surpass the pain or the anguish that you see someone in. And so I think sometimes you take that home and you need to learn to set that boundary and say, hey, okay, I need to set my own time aside to offload. And yeah, I think professionally, in the context of clients, getting referrals is a big thing in today's world, because I think anyone and everyone comes in. People like life coaches, for example, right? Life coaching is not a profession, because what you're dealing with is something very fragile. You're dealing with the mind and the body and behavior, which is how the three aspects are how you conduct yourself through life, right? But when you come in untrained, if I have a lived experience and I come preaching to you about what it's been and how you should live it, that takes away from your experience, right?
Right.
So I think those are the kind of challenges that come up. Um, Other than that, what I have noticed as a challenge personally is overcoming a client, the therapeutic relationship. Sometimes that boundary gets blurred,
Okay.
right? Because you have people relying on you very heavily, and they tend to become dependent on you to get through. But the goal of therapy is to help you regulate your own life.
It's to help you find you. Yeah.
Exactly. And personally, as a therapist, also you tend to get attached to certain clients and you want the best for them. You know, so removing your own biases, all of that, it requires hard work, and
Right.
that comes as a challenge often.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You spoke of trauma, and it's a very real, heavy duty word. In lighter vein, I've always felt traumatized to see my favorite cricket team, like the West Indies, being bundled out for 27, which was a reality recently. Trauma is not seeing Lewis Hamilton doing well in a Ferrari and Carlos Sainz
That
struggling in
hurts.
Williams. But trauma की अगर हम बात करें, most of us carry, correct me if I'm wrong, traumas from our childhood. They become somewhere impactful of our performances in personal and professional domains.
Yeah.
We don't really understand the layers of trauma that we keep carrying within us,
Yeah.
and what to do about it. Like, what do you do if you don't know that you have been traumatized by something, and it tends to blanket or envelope a certain part of your professional duty, or you're not behaving in the right manner in your personal life because guess what, you've been carrying a bit of a childhood trauma. So what advice would you give to people who are unbeknownst to this fact? क्या करें उसका?
I think learn to sit with yourself.
Okay.
I think most people don't really know how to look inwards. They don't really know how to pause and observe what's going on inside. Trauma is an extremely, for lack of a better word, overt, covert. It seeps into every aspect of oneself. And when that happens, your own concept of self becomes very fragmented, right? And to go back into that, it requires you learning to sit with the discomfort, asking yourself the right questions, seek professional help. It's always helpful to go through it with somebody that's trained, you know? But trauma can show up, and trauma has different natures.
Yeah.
It's not just childhood trauma, you know? There's trauma that stems from a lot of different aspects of life. And so I think speaking of trauma, it requires asking yourself. That's my advice. Ask yourself the right questions. When I say right, don't get me wrong, there's no right or wrong,
Right.
right? Ask
Uh,
yourself questions non judgmentally to get to know what it is that you're actually feeling. Because in this day and age, what I notice a lot of is people don't really, they're not very self aware. I think everyone possesses the capacity to be emotionally intelligent. I don't think people don't have that capacity.
I'm not trying to be a philosopher here, as much as I love philosophy, but I think most of the times our efforts completely go into understanding other people, other things, and there's so little effort that we actually put to understanding मैं कौन हूँ भाई? What am I like? Who am I? This is what I feel.
I think that's bang on. I think most people do get through life living up to expectations that have been set for them, as opposed to exploring things that, or finding their own purpose.
Yeah.
And yeah, but I think when coming back to your trauma point, trauma does shape the way that you view the world. It does shape the way that you operate. It skews the way that you perceive things, right? And so it's very important to get to that first.
Right.
And the second those difficult feelings come up, we shun them away and we're like, no, what is this?
Right.
We've just learned this and it's normal. But it's obviously not. That's why it's coming up.
Right.
So,
I have one more question about human psychology and human beings and their behavior. This could sound vague, but it's just a very, very simple, wholehearted question. There's been a lot of talk about mental health and mental health awareness and Men's Mental Health Week and so on and so forth, especially in the last half a decade. Why do you think that is, and what may have led to a situation where people are now more actively seeking mental health? Do you feel we've become more depressed? We've become more misguided by sort of professional and personal lines, becoming a hindrance for the other to exist? Or do you think that we were like that? It's just that the time has come that people are more pronounced in this aspect of reaching out and seeking help. क्या हुआ है ऐसा दैट इस चीज में एक बदलाव है थोड़ा सा?
I think
पहले से तो बदलाव है.
बहुत बदलाव आया है. I truly believe that things are being spoken about because for generations we've been taught to sweep it under the rug.
Right.
We've been taught that, big feelings are not supposed to be felt. We've been taught that men are not allowed to cry.
नहीं वो जुकाम है थोड़ा इसी.
We've been
Right.
taught these things, and I think that there has been a shift in society where people are challenging these notions, which is brilliant to see. But then there's also the complete opposite end of the spectrum where every word is scrutinized. Everything that was considered
Yeah,
very
there's judgment coming from every direction.
everywhere,
Yeah.
everywhere, and things that were considered very normal. For example, when I come back to big feelings, crippling self doubt, anxiety about where you're headed in life, all of these things used to be very normal, right? But now it comes up as a hawa in your face. Mental health has suddenly become a hawa in your face. It's become big and scary. I'm not minimizing it, don't get me wrong. I do believe that people are challenging notions and it's great. I think that change was needed because I think compared to the West, we grew up we grew
Yeah.
substantially slower, you
Yeah.
know? And so I think that growth is important. But that being said, I also think you need to let things sort of flow in the natural order of things. I think mental health should be ingrained in normal conversations. I think that aspect of today I can't function because today I'm so depressed I can't get out of bed and take a shower. I don't think that a Deepika Padukone or someone else coming on board screaming, "Oh, I was depressed," warrants the entire, country
Chain of,
to say,
yeah.
"Hey, me too, me too." But that is how it happens. It becomes a trend. Again, not trying to minimize anyone that's sort of going through it.
Sure.
I'm all too familiar with the feelings. Like, I
Right.
totally understand. But yeah, I think there's been a massive shift which was required. I think COVID, I think that's sort of what got it to the forefront because a lot of people that were isolated, we saw a change in the world. We saw something that we never could comprehend.
Right.
We saw that happen in front of us. People lost people. It was a very tumultuous time. But I think that isolation, that anxiety, I think that brought up all of these feelings for so many people that it could no longer go under the rug. It could no longer just be swept and said, "Hey." So I think that's the shift that I see.
So avidly and so wonderfully answered there. One of the subjects that I think is very critical, not just to the life of a therapist or a counselor, but to every other human being, is the sense of self. Okay, of course, some people have a highly inflated sense of self. Some people don't know whether they have a sense of self. They are not really aware of it. तो ये जो एक peculiarity है इस subject की, what is it? And how do you understand the concept of sense of self?
The way that I view the sense of self, as I said before, I don't think it exists in isolation. I think we are shaped by all of our experiences, all of our interactions, our environment, what we learn, what we're conditioned to know. But that being said, this is a question that I often ask people, and I shall ask you. If there's you in the center and you are attached to all of these aspects of yourself, your family, your work, your professional identity, your relationships, everything that you can think of. And then there's just you in the center and I strip it all away. Who are you?
A myth.
A myth?
No, I
And what
mean,
is that? And what is that myth?
it's a beautiful myth woven around a fluid life worth living for. I don't know
Fluid.
if I'm, yeah,
Fluid being key here.
yeah,
Because I think that all of life, and this is where my humanistic sort of lens comes in, I don't think of mental health being me spewing psychological jargon your way and,
right,
psycho educating you every time I speak to you.
right, right.
Because I think life is fluid. I think individual differences are so vast. Every single person is different. And what's normal for you might not be normal for me, vice versa. There's so many aspects to it that I personally believe that that's where the sense of self comes in. And I think you're constantly learning who that sense of self is for you. What version of yourself are you? The version that I was maybe even 6 months
A more
ago.
detached one, a more regular, everyday, normal kind of a guy. But then you will always ask me, what is your normal? What is your
Exactly.
regular?
Exactly.
I would say non-fussy, no drama,
Yeah.
less hype.
Yeah. And for me, maybe it could be the complete opposite.
Yeah.
The zest for life I want to live. You never know when the bus is coming. It's so fluid. Would I have achieved everything I wanted to? Have I made the difference that I wanted to? All of these big questions. But who am I in the center? You know? And so I think a lot of people tend to spend their lives trying to attain and trying to strive for perfection, for wealth, for all of that. But I just personally feel like wealth itself is so subjective,
Yeah.
you know? And I think that's where your sense of self comes from. I think everyone has core values. How you operate is from a space of your core values. How I operate is from the sense of my core values. That being said, my sense of self is evolving every month. I'm learning new parts of me that I didn't know existed.
And also unlearning. You speak about the
Unlearning.
importance of unlearning things. तो उस पे आप जरा, if you can elaborate a little bit on that.
I'll
Why
tell
is it
you.
important to unlearn?
Because I believe that us as a species, if we constantly do out of everything we've learned, we're not living. We've learned that you should go to school for X amount of years. You should get a degree. You should have a profession that pays you well. You should be a lawyer. You should be a doctor. You should be all of these things. You shouldn't question your parents. You should not be your own individual. That's all the stuff that has made you, right?
Right.
You became that. Now it's time to unlearn that, because when you are learning about yourself, what are you but a mere vessel of these things, right? So once you unlearn is when you realize, hey, that's where purpose lies. That's where
That's where purpose lies, and I think in Ashriya's life, her purpose is to remind people of their beautiful selves and that their sense of self is forever being redefined. And it is important to go out there to be the best that you can be. But important thing also is, from what I've learned, is to be fluid, is not to be carried more than you can chew in terms of the expectations and the burdens that the external world puts on you, and you've put it so avidly and so ardently out there for us. And I think simplicity, with simplicity at its core, and with this magnificent, versatile hat of creativity, the artist that she is, that she dons, she's leading a meaningful life in that she's adding a lot of meaning to the lives of others. And I think that's a great way of living a life. It's been splendid, fantastic. I
Wait, I
ran
do
out
want
of,
to add, however,
yeah,
there's something that I learned and heard when I was a child that has stuck with me till date, which is you are not a tree. You do not need to plant roots everywhere you go, in everything that you do. You don't. And so coming back to that fluid point
yeah.
and how you said fluidity, I think that's what it is. I think you just go with the motions of it.
Fluidity, another important purposeful word that
Yeah.
I'm reminding myself of. It's been fantastic to speak with you.
Thanks for
This is the
having me.
first of the many interactions I'm sure you will have on several public platforms, and I wish you all the best. And I think there have been so many truth telling moments in this discussion that I will hold very dearly. And I hope our listeners and our viewers have utterly enjoyed this. You can completely follow Ashriya's artistic endeavors. You want to give a plug in on your
Yeah.
Instagram and other stuff?
Yeah, it's Custom Coalition. And for my psychology page, it's The Humble Empath. In fact, I'm also doing a series called The Human Experience.
Wow.
And so hopefully we do role reversal where you come in
To
and I
answer
ask
only
the
F1
questions.
questions, sports journalism questions.
No,
No,
but
no.
this is basically a series where I want to have candid, raw, authentic conversations about experiences. That's it. No big frameworks for healing, no big, mental health is big and scary. Just to normalize and ingrain mental health into day to day. I think that's
Right.
the way to make the stigma sort of leave. I think that's already happening, but destigmatizing mental health means ingraining it into day to day life. So I'm going to start that series very soon. So you'll be seeing a lot of that. And yeah.
I wish you all the best with that. And at WhatsApp Life, our endeavor, of course, is to speak about and speak with individuals who come from different facets of life, who speak of different facets of life. Today was, as I say, a truth telling session with Ashriya Puri. Please follow her work. Please follow the artist that she is. And until next time, I, Dev Tyagi, I'll bring you more fascinating content. At least that's the attempt here. Please subscribe to this channel. Please watch our content. Please spread a word. And it's always a pleasure to speak with you. Dhanyavad. Thank you.
Thank you.